Coming up on this episode, is Steve Kerr done at the Warriors after their official elimination at the hands of the Phoenix Suns on Friday night? Plus, the one moment that could change everything for Golden State as we look ahead to the offseason. Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. The Warriors season officially came to an end on Friday night against the Phoenix Suns in a 111-96 defeat. The attention quickly, though, turned to Steve Kerr and his future at the franchise after a late-game embrace with Stephen Curry and Draymond Green certainly sparked some speculation. To the game itself, it felt like the Warriors were pushing uphill from the very outset. Their turnovers in the first quarter were deplorable, 9 of them to just 6 made field goals. They quickly fell behind by double digits and as much as 18 in the opening period. They did have an excellent second quarter, got themselves back into the contest. The Phoenix went on a run in the third and just had control of the game throughout the majority of it. I was optimistic and hopeful that it could have been a repeat of what we saw against the Clippers on Wednesday, where the Warriors were behind by double digits on multiple occasions in that game, but found a way to stay close enough. And I was hoping that, hey, could they stay close enough in this one and make a run in the fourth quarter as they did against the Clippers and get the job done? Phoenix had been a little shaky in recent fourth quarters. There's no doubt about that, including in their first playing game against the Trailblazers. But that wasn't to be. Jalen Green, star of the show for the Suns. And it felt like every time the Warriors were trying to make a mini run and get back into the game, Jalen Green was there to come up with a big bucket. And credit to him. Absolutely credit to him, because I spoke about on the preview episode I did discussing his recent form against the Warriors dating back to last year's playoff series with the Houston Rockets, where the Warriors were more than comfortable kind of to let him run the show for the Rockets rather than Alperen Şengün, obviously. And it felt to me as if they were probably pretty comfortable going into this one, letting Jalen Green run the show, but that quickly dissipated when he started making shots from everywhere, essentially from all three levels. And credit to him to come back from a first round series last year, where aside from game 2, where he went for 38 points, he averaged less than 10 points a game in that series. Had to be pulled off the floor by Ime Udoka in big moments. So for Jalen Green to respond like that and have a big game against a team he struggled against 12 months ago, fair play. Absolutely fair play to him. It wasn't as if Devin Booker got off the leash for the of the Warriors. It didn't feel like Dylan Brooks had some big shots at some big times, but it didn't really feel like he was necessarily a huge part of the game. It was Jalen Green who took over from Phoenix. And it kind of feels disappointing to me that, like, your season came to an end at the hands of Jalen Green. Like, I don't feel like he's the kind of player that you should necessarily have your season ended by. But again, like, full respect to him. He got the job done in a way the Warriors obviously couldn't, in a way Steph Curry couldn't. Felt like he was tired throughout the game, and understandably so. Like, he had a big performance, not only like the physical performance on Wednesday against the Clippers, but just like the emotional outcome of that game, of coming back from a 13-point fourth quarter deficit to get the job done. The joy and the passion that brought, there can be a bit of an emotional letdown from that, and it felt like that was perhaps the case a little bit. It's unfortunate the Warriors just got themselves in a hole early, really. And again, as I said, pushing uphill from there. Like, Pods had a reasonable game, I thought. 20-10 was probably Golden State's arguably best player for the game. But then you look back at the first quarter, he had some turnovers. He had that kind of 1-on-3 layup early in the game where it's like, what are you doing, man? Like, he was part of the reason why the Warriors went down double digits early. So hard to take too many positives from it. Obviously, Porzingis left kind of midway through or early third quarter and didn't return with that ankle soreness that had him questionable going into the game. But it is what it is, right? It's the outcome that we've got, and now we've just moved forward to the offseason where the Warriors are going to have a lot of decisions to make, starting with Steve Kerr, who definitely sparked speculation over his future with the late game embrace with Draymond Green and Steph Curry as they left the floor with only a minute to go. And then in the post-game press conference afterwards, certainly didn't do anything to quell that speculation, was far from giving any certainty on his return to the Warriors. Said he'd take a couple of weeks off here, determine what he wants for his future, then come together with Joe Lacob and obviously General Manager Mike Dunleavy Jr. as well and discuss where to for both he personally, Steve individually, and the franchise, obviously, and if they actually want Steve Kerr back. He did reveal that he still loves coaching, but did also admit that there's an expiration date on this kind of stuff. Obviously, just completed his 12th season as Warrior head coach. Will he go into a 13th now? We'll wait and see. It feels like the Warriors need, like they've got some time here, having not made the playoffs, they've got some time, but you would think they would have to make a determination on that before the draft and free agency and trade stuff goes down. Obviously, the Warriors are going to have plans in place with what they want to do, and maybe some of those plans could influence Steve, but I don't think you can go into free agency without knowing who your head coach is because, players, and particularly veteran players, are going to be persuaded somewhat by who is the head coach and having some kind of determination on that and having some stability, I suppose, at the franchise as well. So I'd assume that a decision will be made, again, not in the next couple of weeks, but in the next month, probably, or at least 6 weeks to 2 months. But again, the Warriors are going to have some time here. Should Steve finish up at the Warriors? That's the real question. I am of the belief the way that Steph, the way that Draymond speak of him, and particularly Steph, because Draymond's future within itself is up in the air slightly. But the way that Steph speaks of Steve, I'm of the belief that if he wants to coach the Warriors next season, he will coach the Warriors next season, right? I think there will be a deal on the table from Joe Lacob, Mike Dunleavy Jr. for Steve Kerr to be the coach if he wants to be. So he's now just got to go away and determine that. He did reveal in the press conference that he's not going to be taking any offers from any other teams. It's going to be the Warriors or nothing next season. He's got to decide on whether he wants to coach at all or, go and spend some time with his family or perhaps go back to the broadcasting booth, commentate some games and be an expert an analyst on different things potentially. So we'll wait and see what happens with Steve. But I'm of the belief that he will get a deal if he wants a deal. Now, I know there's a lot of Warrior fans out there who think the Warriors should move on from Steve Kerr, who think he probably should have been moved on a long time ago. Look, I'm very much on the fence when it comes to this. Like, honestly, I'm on the fence. And that'll sound weird because I'm here trying to give my opinion and analyze things. I understand it. But I can see both sides of the argument, and I don't particularly have a huge opinion either way on this. The one thing I will say is that I'm certainly not a Steve Kerr hater. I don't want him driven out of the franchise, right? And I am very appreciative of what he's done for the franchise as a 4-time championship winning coach. So if that was his life, like I got pretty sad, I suppose, watching him and Draymond and Steph embrace. And even if you want Steve Kerr to be done as coach, surely you must acknowledge what he's done he's a 4-time championship winning coach. For all we know, I could go the rest of my lifetime and not see another 4 Warrior championships. So at the very least, even if you do want him gone, you have to acknowledge what he's done and what he's meant to this team. And I think you can't help but be a little bit sad thinking about the fact that might have been the last time that Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Steve Kerr were in partnership together with the Warriors, right? Whether that's Steve departing or potentially Draymond departing, maybe both. But if that was the last game, that was it's sad. It's like it's an end of an era, right? And I feel like even if you're a Steve Kerr hater, at the very least, acknowledge and understand what he's meant to the team over the past dozen years. So that's the first thing. I think it's important to recognize what Steve has achieved with this team. However, if you do want Steve Kerr gone, I can understand the value, and Steve mentioned this himself, he understands the value of getting a new voice in, right? And getting some different ideas and perhaps for the locker room, again, having the same guy there for a dozen years, things can get a little stale, right? We understand that. Now, if I was the Warriors, I'd be looking at this and saying, hey, we've got at the very least, where do you want to put him? Okay. I know Steve Kerr has a lot of people in the fan base that don't love him. I get that. I think if you look at kind of different polls that are done and other stuff in league circles, I think you get an indication that this guy is still a top 5 probably, and if not top 5, at least top 10 head coach in the NBA. Okay, and that's pretty good, having a top 10 head coach in the NBA. Maybe top 5. It's hard to rank coaches sometimes necessarily, but he's a good coach, right? Whatever way you want to put it, I think he's a good coach. That doesn't mean he's a great coach anymore. It also can help, right? When you sometimes you just got to take a risk. And maybe the Warriors should look at this and say, you know what, we've got a good head coach, but we don't evaluate him as being great anymore. Maybe we should actually go out there and try and find our next great head coach. And that could completely backfire. You could go and take someone that's unproven or something like that, or someone from the college ranks, whatever it may be, and it might backfire completely, and that might be an absolute dud of a head coach who's one of the worst head coaches in the league and ultimately gets sacked a year or two into their tenure with the franchise. It could completely backfire. It could rejuvenate the team. It could re-energize the team. It could be a leader to take this team forward into a potential another deep playoff run. So is that the risk that you need to take at this point? Because as great as Steve has been, I also understand, the reality of this is that the Warriors have now missed the playoffs in 4 of the past 7 seasons. That's the reality of it. They also won a championship within that time, so you also got to recognize that. But missing the playoffs 4 of the last 7 seasons isn't ideal, even if you've got to look at extenuating circumstances. Like if you look at the 1920 season, well, of course the Warriors aren't going to make the playoffs. Clay's injured, KD leaves, Steph's injured, blah, blah, blah. If you look at this season, not really, I'm not putting this on Steve. Jimmy Butler gets injured, Moses Moody gets injured, Steph misses 27 games. That is what it is, really. I don't think the Warriors missing the playoffs this season is a Steve Kerr fault or issue. But history also says they've now missed the playoffs 4 in the last 7 years. So really, I don't have a real strong opinion on it. I'm kind of on the fence. If he stays, great, fantastic. I think that'll be on the back of Steph wanting him to stay first and foremost. And if you're a Steph Curry believer, then I think you've got to believe in Steve Kerr because Steph believes and trusts in Steve Kerr, right? But then at the same time, if you think the Warriors need a new voice, then I could understand why that has some value and why the Warriors might need to take a risk at this point in time. We'll wait and see. I'm sure we'll get a decision on this in the next 6 weeks. Obviously going to be a huge offseason for Golden State as they look to rebuild this roster and get back into some kind of contention next season. But there is one moment above all that is going to really dictate what happens here over the summer. As much as what happened on Friday night in Phoenix was disappointing, the play-in tournament actually didn't work out that badly for the Warriors. You got a vintage Steph Curry and Draymond Green game that kind of reiterated that those guys are still very much capable at the highest level. A fantastic victory over the LA Clippers. And then you also get to keep your lottery pick. You get to take the lottery pick into the offseason and you get the hope and a little bit of optimism from that game against the Clippers when it comes to the performances of Steph Curry and Draymond Green in particular during that game. The lottery is the one moment that is going to set up the entire Golden State offseason here. And I am not putting that lightly. That's not hyperbolic. That is the moment that literally could shift the entire future of this franchise. May 10, it will be. Now, the Warriors will go in with the 11th best odds for the number 1 overall pick. They'll have a 9.4% chance of landing the top 4 pick. The strong likelihood, over 90% chance, is that they will remain where they're at, essentially, which is going to be the 11th overall pick, which, guess what, is still a very good pick to have. There's going to be guys that they could target that I'll look at particularly once the lottery takes place. And if they, as expected, according to the odds, finish with the 11th overall pick, then we'll certainly get into some draft prospects or other things the Warriors could potentially do with that. But if the Warriors can follow suit with what the Dallas Mavericks did last season, where they had the exact same position, they had the 11th best odds and jumped up to not only top 4, but number 1 overall, and of course, access to Cooper Flag, then that is going to certainly shift absolutely everything for the Warriors. And I'm not sitting here asking for the number 1 overall pick. I'm just here sitting, hey, NBA, the Warriors, you know what? They didn't tank. Maybe reward the fact they didn't tank. They still went for it. Steph Curry came back. Can we be rewarded for that, please? Could we just get the 4th overall pick? Just jump up into the top 4? That'd be fantastic. Because as I said, that will change absolutely everything. Why will that change absolutely everything? Well, first of all, of course, top 4, this is a top 4 draft, essentially. That's what many, and I'm not a draft expert by any means, but I know enough to know that, hey, the experts, the draft experts are saying this is a 4-man draft, essentially, in terms of absolute top-tier elite talent, with some of the guys, AJ Dybansa, Darren Peterson, Caleb Wilson, Cam Boozer, whatever order you want to put those guys in, it seems like that's the top tier. So getting just a top 4 pick, that could get you a future franchise cornerstone. Now, do the Warriors, after their recent top 10 picks in James Wiseman and Jonathan Kuminga failed spectacularly, do they want to go back to the well and take another top 10 selection? And in this case, a potential top 4 pick? We'll have to wait and see on that if it does take place. But at the very least, it could give you access to someone who is kind of seen by many, regardless of who it is in that top 4, someone that is seen as a potential franchise cornerstone of the future. So there's that to begin with. But for the Warriors in their position, still looking to build around Steph Curry, getting a top 4 pick would change everything when it comes to the trade market. You would get teams screaming out to you, throwing offers your way if you're Mike Dunleavy Jr., with really interesting stuff, I believe. Because again, opposing rival teams are going to look at your situation, looking at trying to build around Steph Curry, thinking, do they really want to take this pick? Let's see what we could offer up here to convince the Warriors to move from a potential top 4 pick, right? So there is going to be plenty of offers on the table. And we know when the Warriors had the 2nd overall pick, there were offers on the table. The one that always frustrates me was the one that was reported where there was talk about the Bulls moving up from 4 to 2 and the Warriors getting 4 and Wendell Carter Jr. Wendell Carter Jr., a reasonable center, certainly a better center than James Wiseman proved to be. And Wendell Carter was still young at the time and part of the Bulls, obviously, before his move to the Magic in the Nikola Vucevic trade. If the Warriors had moved down to 4, then all of a sudden maybe they take Tyrese Halliburton or Denny Avdia or someone like that who's obviously gone on to prove a future All-Star caliber player. Anthony, they could have moved up ideally to get Anthony Edwards. They could have taken LaMelo instead of James Wiseman. They could have done 1,000 different things, right? But that's what the access to a top 4 pick is going to give the Warriors. 1,000 different options. Now, that makes things more complicated, right? But it certainly gives you many more options to sift through and work through, and many of which could potentially lead to a championship. Whether that's draft a guy who turns into a superstar, whether that's take an offer on the table from a team that really wants one of those top 4 picks, whether it's, and this is probably the biggest thing, going out, we know Golden State have already been linked to the likes of Giannis, Kawhi Leonard, LeBron, ahead of free agency, right? Could you go out and use that top 4 pick to chase a star? Don't worry about the trade offers and the calls that are coming in. Will you get on the phone yourself if you're Mike Dunleavy Jr. and go out and make calls chasing a star, right? Whoever that may be, okay? Giannis is the big one here. And I've spoken about this and the idea that the Giannis trade pursuit, if the Warriors want to renew interest in that this offseason, could already be over because they might simply not have enough to convince the Bucks compared to what Milwaukee might be able to get from other teams. Jake Fisher just had a piece in the last 24 hours for the Stein Line talking about Khalil Ware's performance in Miami's play-in tournament game earlier in the week in their 1-point loss to the Charlotte Hornets in the 9-10 game, talking about Khalil Ware's performance and how good he looked and how much more appetizing a package from the Heat might look to the Bucks for Giannis because of Khalil Ware's performance in that game. Which I'm like, well, it's one game. I don't know how much we can take from it, but guess what? It's the national stage. It's an elimination game. It's a big moment. He certainly stepped up. Huge performance from Khalil Ware. So to the Bucks, look at that a bit differently now. And so if you're the Warriors, and there's been reports from ESPN Shams Charania in his discussion over Giannis's future about the fact that the Heat's offer before the deadline was more intriguing, essentially, to Milwaukee than what Golden State's offer was. So the Warriors feel behind the 8 ball here when it comes to the Giannis situation. However, if you get a top 4 pick, then that suddenly changes everything. Because right now, Khalil Ware is the best prospect that can be offered up between Miami and Golden State. Well, if the Warriors get a top 4 pick, then that's more than Khalil Ware, right? That's a better chip to have. So suddenly you'd be back in the, I think you'd be back in the Giannis conversation. Now, where Giannis wants to go is obviously going to be a big factor in that. Would you go top 4 pick for Kawhi Leonard? Probably not at 34 years old. But imagine what you could do and try and convince play. Maybe there's another trade you make. Maybe you can go and get Kawhi and it takes maybe 2 future first-round picks and you feel more comfortable doing that because you're saying we're trading for Kawhi and we're landing a top 4 prospect here. Like, imagine how much more willing Joe Lacob, as he looks at the future of the Warriors, if the Warriors land a top 4 pick in this draft, suddenly Joe looks around and says, all right, that 2031 pick, that 2033 pick, I'm a bit more open to trading those now for win now talent because I'm getting a top 4 pick in this draft. So just think about the options and the stuff that this brings up, right? And then, you know what? You trade a top 4 pick or you trade your future picks, whatever it may be. You go and get whether it's Giannis, Kawhi, whatever other star player. Then you head into free agency and it's suddenly like, like imagine you trade for Kawhi or something. I don't even know how it would work salary matching wise. But imagine you trade for Kawhi and you bring in a top 4 pick. You don't reckon that looks a little bit better to prospective free agents? Because right now, if I'm a veteran player in the league, I'm looking at the Warriors, I'm thinking, they just finished 10th in the Western Conference. 10th in terms of the end of the regular season anyway. And that's kind of how it goes down in history books now that they haven't made the playoffs. Steph Curry's 38 years old. Jimmy Butler's coming off a torn ACL. One of their decent young players, a starter, Moses Moody, could be out for the entirety of next season with his knee injury. Draymond Green, if he comes back, he's going to be 36 years old. Al Horford, if he comes back, he's going to be 40 years old. Is that really a team that I want to go and play for? Now, there might be a free agent out there and a good veteran free agent who says, I want to play with Steph Curry. Okay, and that's enough. Steph is always the biggest pull when it comes to this stuff. I'm sure Al Horford, the opportunity to play with a veteran team, to play with Steph Curry was a big pull for Al Horford 12 months ago. Or less than 12 months ago, nearly 12 months ago. But suddenly, if you're using your future picks or that top 4 pick to go and get whichever player that suddenly makes you look like a much stronger team, then you are going to boost your chances of getting a guy in free agency who might say, you know what, I want to go play with that team for a year, so I'm going to take the veteran minimum when I could go and get the taxpayer mid-level exception from another team. It's just going to make the Warriors look so much more appetizing for free agents. So what I'm saying here is this May 10 lottery, chances are, look, cool, they finish with the 11th overall pick. You could still trade that. You could still use that in deals, sure. You could still use that to go and get probably a rotation caliber player straight away for next season, right? In terms of, I don't know, Yaxel Lenderborg or something like that. Advanced, 4-year collegiate player. Go and grab him with the 11th overall pick, something like that. But on the 1 in 10 chance you jump into the top 4, it just changes absolutely everything. It changes what you can do on the trade market. It changes how you're going to look to prospective free agents. It's going to set up the entire Golden State offseason, which the entire Golden State offseason could then set up and change the entire next decade of the franchise. So when I say this moment on May 10, the draft lottery could change everything for the Warriors, I think it's a pretty strong case to be made of why that's the case. Let me know, guys. Let me know how much you're looking forward to the lottery. And if the Warriors were to jump into a top 4 pick, what do you think they do with it? Do they keep it and draft a guy? Or do they go out using a trade for Giannis? Are they more open to trading their future picks in a different trade? Let me know what's going to happen. Going to finish it up there, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that'd be greatly appreciated. Follow me at POC252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. Golden State with Mates on Instagram and TikTok as well. And I'll see you on the next episode.